Jamie Dornan speaks out, the final truth behind the love that shook Hollywood. The studio. The studio is small by design, a chiaroscuro of lamps and shadows meant to cradle confession rather than spectacle. The BBC emblem breathes softly in the corner like a nightlight. A Steinway-black table sits between two armchairs upholstered in charcoal wool, the kind of fabric that absorbs sound and secrets. No audience, no applause, just the long, expectant hush of prime time. The interviewer, calm, low-voiced, a veteran of lives unpacked on camera, waits with a clipboard balanced on one knee. The red tally lamp yawns to life. "Good evening," he says. "Tonight, a conversation many thought would never happen." Footsteps. Then Jamie Dornan enters in a dark suit, no tie, a crisp white shirt open at the throat. He looks like a man who understands the price of being seen. Not handsome in the feverish way of billboards, but beautiful in the way that sorrow can soften a face. He sits, offers a small, wary smile, and laces his fingers together as though to keep them from making other decisions. Jamie, the interviewer nods. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for having me." A pause, long, useful, ethical. "Shall we begin?" He exhales. "Let's." The first door. The interviewer starts not with the scandal but with a date. 2014, he says, the way one might say, once upon a time. The year is a door, behind it, auditions, chemistry reads, a franchise poised to ignite 1,000 think pieces. The camera leans in, friendly, like a neighbor at a garden fence. "Do you remember your first proper rehearsal with Dakota Johnson?" the interviewer asks. Jamie smiles without showing his teeth. "Yes," he says. "She had the script folded twice, like a note. She read a line and then looked up and, I suppose I understood subtext for the first time in my life." Meaning? Meaning the words were only a fraction of the conversation. He doesn't say electricity or magnetism or fate. He says, conversation. The BBC loves language like that, careful, adult, unthreatening, language that can hold a storm without spilling. From the outside, the interviewer continues, the chemistry looked manufactured to sell tickets. "You're saying it didn't need help?" "It didn't need anything," Jamie replies. "That was the problem." A soft light in the rafters brightens by 1 degree, enough to find the thoughtful lines beside his mouth. He doesn't flinch. "The rule." "Hollywood has rules," the interviewer offers, inviting a map. "Yes," Jamie says. "Some are written. Many aren't. One of the unwritten ones is, keep the feeling on screen. Don't let it leak." And did it? Jamie's gaze drops to the tabletop, to a faint ring where a previous guest's glass once lived. He rubs it with his thumb like a relic. "It leaked," he says softly. "Not in a way we intended. But feelings are solvent. They find their way through." "Were you in love?" Silence slides into the room and takes a chair. This is the question that carries freight from 2 continents and a decade of headlines. The interviewer does not blink. Jamie lifts his eyes. There's no theater in them. "Yes," he says. "We were." The answer is not explosive. It is gentle, like a knot that finally decides to loosen. The arithmetic of harm. "People were hurt," the interviewer says, "just the fact." "Yes," Jamie answers. "And I'll live with that." "How do you think about responsibility?" "The arithmetic of it?" Jamie inhales. "You learn there is no equation that balances. You can be honest about motives, you can be careful with timelines, you can avoid lies, but in the end, someone has to carry pain. And sometimes it's people who didn't volunteer." "Your family," the interviewer says. Jamie nods. "My wife was, the sort of person who turns down the volume on every room she walks into. She deserved an easier decade." He's not defensive. He's not self-flagellating. He is, for once, unarmed. "Did you ever think leaving would make everything simpler?" the interviewer asks. Daily, he says. But simplicity is not the same thing as right. The studio is confessional. The camera finds his hands. They are still laced together, but the knuckles whiten with a memory. The industry tried to control the narrative, the interviewer suggests. Jamie smiles. The industry tries to control weather. Sometimes it succeeds. Sometimes the storm declines to read the memo. And the storm was love? The storm was honesty chafing against optics. He doesn't use Dakota's name yet. It hovers in the air like music from a room down the hall. Why speak now? The interviewer asks. Dakota has spoken. The world debated. You stayed quiet, mostly. Why this program? Why tonight? Jamie glances at the blackness beyond the lens. Because I'm tired of letting strangers carry our ghosts, he says. And because truth has an expiry date, beyond that, it curdles. The night he didn't leave. He tells a small story. Not a kiss. Not a bed. A corridor. We were filming nights. It was 3 a.m. She finished late, she always worked late, always gave everything. There was a corridor between soundstage and car park that had these terrible fluorescent bulbs. She looked blue under them. Cold. I walked with her to the door. And when she got in the car, I didn't leave. I stood there, like an idiot, watching the taillights until they turned a corner. I remember thinking, if I go home now, I'll be a little less alive. He laughs softly, without amusement. That was when I knew the rule had already broken. Did you tell her? The interviewer asks. Eventually. Not in words. Some things you say by staying. The letters you never send. The interviewer asks about the letter the world read, the one leaked to the paper of record, the one that sounded like a violin playing by itself in a church. I didn't leak it, Jamie says. I wouldn't, but I knew it existed. I'd written my own, once. Then tore it up. I thought silence was kinder. Was it? No, he says. Silence is a heavy kindness. It bruises. He glances toward the light again as though steadying himself against a wave. If I had my time again, I would have spoken to fewer rooms and more directly to the one person who mattered. You mean Dakota? Yes. There it is, the name, finally let in. It doesn't echo, it settles. The film that wasn't a film. They speak of the trilogy and of the criticism, some of it fair, some of it performative, much of it lucrative. They speak of how fame distorts fidelity, not just to other people, but to one's own self. They speak of gender, expectation, consent to the public gaze. Did you ever feel exploited by the machine? The interviewer asks. Jamie considers. Exploited implies passivity, he says. I was complicit. We both were. We signed the papers. We bore the rewards. We bore the costs. But there's a sliver in the middle where real life insisted on being real. That sliver wasn't for sale. We tried to protect it. Failing at that, that's what stings. Protect from whom? Everyone, he says, including ourselves. The apology. Is there anything you want to say to Amelia? The interviewer asks. Not a trap, a bridge. Jamie swallows. I've said it privately, he replies. But if this helps close the book, I am sorry for the time I spent half present and the time I spent over-explaining. I am sorry for making her navigate a weather system she did not conjure. She gave me a harbor, and I kept staring at a storm. And to Dakota? He lets the question rest for a heartbeat. Thank you, he says. For telling the truth when I didn't. And for walking away when we had to. Sometimes love is measured by the grace with which you don't keep it. The interviewer's eyes lower, as if in respect. The myth of the grand gesture. People want a grand ending, the interviewer says. Reconciliation, a kiss in the rain, or a public renunciation, shouting on a rooftop that it was all an invention. Neither seems to be true here. No, Jamie says. The grown-up ending is boring on paper. It's two people admitting timing defeated them, and refusing to turn that defeat into cruelty. Have you seen each other recently? A few months ago, a cafe. We laughed. We cried. We said the lines we owed each other. And then we paid the bill. Did you hug? Yes, he says. The sort of hug you give at airports, except no one's flying anywhere. The children in the story. The interviewer changes lanes with compassion. Your children, he says. What do you teach them about love, given everything? That it isn't proof, Jamie answers. It's practice. That you can love someone and fail them, and that those facts don't cancel each other out. That apologies are not magic, but they are medicine. That privacy is sacred, even for people who make a living in the glare. Will they watch this interview? Someday, he says, when they're old enough to parse gentleness from gossip. The industry's mirror. Do you think Hollywood learned anything from your story? The interviewer asks, almost smiling at his own naivete. I think Hollywood learns like a glacier moves, Jamie says. But I've seen small shifts. Fewer NDAs covering basic humanity. More honest conversations about on-screen intimacy and off-screen boundaries. And an understanding that publicists can't parent hearts. Would you do it all again? The work? He asks. Yes. The success? With caution. The silence? No. The letter you do send. The lights soften another notch. The interviewer closes his folder. Is there something you brought that we haven't discussed? He asks, the old BBC ritual. Jamie reaches into his jacket. He removes a single sheet of paper, creased, guarded, real. It's not a letter, he says. It's a paragraph. I wrote it last week. I don't know if I'll ever publish it, but I can read it. He unfolds it. His voice steadies. We were not a scandal. We were a season. It rained, it fed us, it flooded us, and then it moved on. We did not drown, we learned to swim differently. If I am kind now in ways I wasn't, it's because kindness was the only boat that would carry us back to shore. I wish everyone involved gentler weather. I wish the past a soft bed. I wish the future a door that opens without creaking. He folds the paper and slips it away. That's all, he says. The question that hurts and heals. The interviewer sits forward, elbows on knees, the way you lean toward someone you like. Jamie, he says, do you still love her? The question is not lurid. It is anatomy. Jamie considers the floor, then the host, then some invisible place just beyond the camera's left shoulder where the memory seems to keep its office. I love who we were, he says. I love who we helped each other become. I love the fact that we did not turn our ending into a campaign. But love for a person you are no longer allowed to hold, evolves. It becomes a blessing you say under your breath. So the answer is yes, he smiles, sad and kind. Yes, in the sense that gratitude is a kind of love. No, in the sense that possession is not. The aftercare. The interviewer asks if there was a moment, one precise moment, when Jamie knew the story had to end. Yes, Jamie says. Venice. A festival. She was walking up a staircase toward a screening. Flashbulbs, gold, chaos. She turned and looked for me, pure habit, I think, and I wasn't there. I was across town, pretending to enjoy a dinner. I realized I couldn't be the person she reflexively searched for anymore. Not because I didn't want to be, God knows I did, but because loving her meant making sure she found the person who could stand beside her in daylight. So I left the restaurant, went to the water, and I said goodbye out loud. The gondolier thought I was mad. He laughs, and it sounds like something that once hurt and now only aches when it rains. And then? The interviewer asks. And then you get on with it. You learn how to buy vegetables again. You take your kids to school. You answer emails. The great, humbling mercy of life is that it insists upon itself. The room without applause. There is a rule in television, end on the beat, that cannot be improved by more words. The interviewer senses it approaching, like a tide you know by smell before you see. Is there anything you want people to stop saying? he asks, offering one last stitch. Jamie smiles. That it was all a fantasy, he says. Or that we were villains. We were human. That's messier. And better. And anything you want them to remember? That we tried to leave each other better than we found each other, he replies. That closure isn't a door slamming, it's a hand released, with care. The interviewer nods. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you. The red lamp blinks out. The room exhales. Somewhere a kettle is turned on, somewhere else, a publicist checks a phone. Outside, rain begins, polite as London rain tends to be. More a suggestion than an event. Jamie stands, shakes the interviewer's hand, and walks toward the dark slit of the exit. For a moment he stops beside the camera and rests his palm on the cool edge of the lens housing, as though thanking the machine for behaving. Then he leaves. London, later. He rides in the back of a quiet car with the window cracked enough to hear the world. The city is a map of reflected lights. People are eating, arguing, laughing, forgetting. He feels, for the first time in a long while, ordinary. His phone buzzes. A message, unknown number, or perhaps a number he once knew by heart and deleted to protect himself from himself. No name on the screen. Just a text. You were kind. I'm glad. Be well. He doesn't write back, not because he's strong, but because the kindness is complete as written. He puts the phone face down, watches a woman on a bicycle glide past like an afterthought, and smiles at nothing. At home, he makes tea without turning on the big lights. The kitchen smells faintly of lemons and sleep. He sits at the table and takes the paragraph back out of his pocket. He reads it once more, then folds it into a book that is not by him. He places the book on the shelf and does not try to memorize where. Closure, he realizes, is not a punctuation mark. It's a posture. He rinses the cup, leaves it to dry, and turns off the lamp. Across the water. In another city, also near water, Dakota finishes reading a transcript of the interview sent by a friend. She closes her laptop, sits for a while, and listens to the hum the apartment makes when you ask it for nothing. Her phone is face down too. She does not turn it over. She goes to the window. The night leans in, curious as a cat. She presses her forehead to the glass and lets her breath fog a small oval. With one finger, in the fog, she writes a single word. Peace. It fades almost immediately. She smiles anyway. The viewers. The interview airs. It is not the sort of broadcast that sets social media on fire with GIFs, though there are some. Mostly, it is the sort that people watch with their hands around a mug, nodding at nothing, grateful for a tone that suggests adulthood is possible. A woman in her 50s in Leeds watches and texts her sister. He said the thing we never find the words for. A university student in Delhi, up too late, tweets, maybe love doesn't fail. Maybe timing does. A carpenter in Cork says to no one in particular, fair play to him for not throwing anyone under the bus. And then they go back to their lives, slightly altered in the way that only gentleness can alter you. Imperceptibly at first, then all at once. The small, necessary ending. Weeks pass. The headlines thin. Interest, as always, migrates. Jamie works. He runs in the rain. He sends a birthday card early so he won't forget. He learns a new recipe that his children politely describe as nearly perfect. The world keeps being the world. On a mild evening, he walks home along a canal where the water keeps the sky's secrets. People pass, unbothered. He stops on a bridge and looks down. The lights paint themselves on the surface and tremble there. He thinks, not of the interview, not of the decade, not of the doorways he didn't walk through or the ones he did. He thinks of the luxury of quiet. He thinks of the privilege of having been loved at all, even if the spell broke at noon. He places his hands on the railing, and in the privacy of his own mind he says 3 blessings. May everyone involved be spared the unkindness of certainty. May what was beautiful remain unweaponized. May I keep my promises when no one is watching. A bicycle bell rings behind him, he steps aside. Life continues, as it has sworn to do. He smiles, small, unreportable, true, and walks on.